When my daughter whispered, "Mom, there's someone in the walls," I thought she was joking. That's how it started, a trembling whisper in the middle of a Sunday morning, the kind where the air smells like coffee and cinnamon toast and everything is supposed to be normal. I remember turning from the sink, dish towel still in my hand, and seeing the look on her face, wide-eyed, pale, trembling not from fear, but from confusion. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" I asked. She pointed toward the hallway that led to the back of our house, the old part, the one we never used much since the kids preferred the living room and kitchen area. "There's a door," she said, "behind the bookshelf. Me and Ethan moved it by accident." My heart gave one hard thump. Behind the bookshelf? We'd lived in this house 8 years. I'd cleaned that shelf, dusted its corners, rearranged its books dozens of times. There was no door. At least, there wasn't supposed to be. I wanted to brush it off. Maybe it was just a gap or a shadow. But something about the way she said it, the way her small voice faltered at the end, it made my stomach twist. So I followed her. The shelf was heavy, oak, I think. My husband, Mark, had bought it second-hand when we first moved in. Behind it, sure enough, was an outline, a wooden panel, flush with the wall, a doorknob so small and rusted you could almost miss it. For a second, we both just stared. The air felt different there, colder, still. I could hear my own breath. When I turned that knob, it gave with a slow, sticky creak. The smell that came out was like time itself, old paper, dust, and something faintly sweet, like lavender gone bad. And then there it was, a small bedroom, neat, hidden, a twin bed with faded sheets, a child's drawing taped to the wall, and on the nightstand, a diary. That was the moment my whole world started to tilt. Because nothing in that room belonged to me, and yet everything in it felt too familiar. The same curtains I'd once picked for my daughter's room. The same brand of stuffed rabbit I'd bought years ago for her brother. I didn't know it then. But that room would unmake everything I thought I knew about love, about trust, about the man I'd married. Normal life. Set up. Before that morning, our life looked ordinary from the outside. I guess that's what makes this kind of betrayal so cruel. It hides best in normality. Mark and I had been married 13 years. We met in college. He studied architecture, I studied psychology. He was the kind of man who smiled easily, laughed deeply, and seemed to hold the room without trying. I used to think he had a gift for making people feel safe. We had 2 kids, Ethan, 10, and Lily, 7. Our house wasn't big, but it was warm. We had family dinners around the oak table, Saturday pancakes, and movie nights on the couch with popcorn in mismatched bowls. I worked part-time at a counseling center, helping young mothers. Mark ran a small design firm from home. He worked late a lot, though. That used to bother me, but I told myself it was normal. Running a business is stressful. He'd always been responsible, loyal, or so I thought. If you asked me then, I'd have said our marriage was fine. Not perfect, no marriage is, but solid. We'd had a rough patch after my second pregnancy, and after my mother died, I grew quieter, more inward. He grew busier, but we were partners, or at least I believed we were. There were small things I ignored. Like the way he'd sometimes get defensive when I asked simple questions. "Where were you, honey?" Would earn me a sharp, "Don't start, Emily." Or how his phone never left his pocket anymore, even when he showered. Or that one night when I woke up at 2 a.m. and found him sitting in the dark living room, phone glowing against his face, smiling at something. I told myself I was imagining it. That I was tired, paranoid, overthinking. You'd be surprised how easy it is to gaslight yourself when you love someone. But the thing that really stuck with me looking back was how he changed around the kids. He'd get possessive in small, strange ways. When Ethan made a card for Father's Day, Mark took a photo and then slipped the card into his drawer, like it was too precious for display. When Lily lost a tooth, he kept the note she'd written for the tooth fairy. Said he wanted to remember every moment. At the time, I thought it was sweet. Now I wonder if he was just trying to hold on to something. Or someone else. The morning before the discovery, I'd had one of those gut feelings. I'd woken early before everyone else, and the house was quiet except for the hum of the fridge. I'd made coffee, staring out the window at the frost on the grass, and I remember thinking, something's off. He's hiding something. Then he came in, smiling, rubbing his eyes, kissed my forehead like always. "Morning, babe," he said. And just like that, my suspicion folded in on itself. Because when someone's been your safe place for over a decade, your mind will do anything to keep believing they still are. Later that day, he took the kids to the park so I could have time for myself. I stayed home, folded laundry, watched a movie. I didn't know it then, but that was the last truly peaceful day of my old life. The next morning, Lily found the door. When we first opened it, I didn't call Mark right away. Some instinct, the quiet, primal kind, told me to wait. I told the kids not to touch anything, closed the door, and moved the bookshelf back. When Mark got home that evening, I tried to act normal. He kissed me on the cheek, asked about my day. I told him the washing machine was making a noise, asked if he could look at it later. He said sure, smiled, poured himself a drink, and as he stood there, relaxed, unbothered, I realized I couldn't ask him yet. Because if I did, and if he lied, I needed proof. That night, after the kids went to bed, I went back to that hidden room. I used my phone flashlight this time. The diary was still there. Blue cover, frayed edges. I opened it. The handwriting was neat, childlike, the kind that makes your heart ache before you even read the words. The first page said, "My name is Sarah. Daddy says I can't tell anyone about this room." My hands went cold. I flipped through more pages, drawings of a man and a girl, stick figures holding hands. Notes about Daddy's visits and Mommy's crying. Then one line, written in smudged pencil, like it had been erased and written again. "I think Daddy loves two families." I sat there on that dusty floor, shaking, the diary open on my knees. The air felt thick, almost unbreathable, and somewhere down the hall I heard the soft sound of Mark brushing his teeth, humming under his breath. I remember thinking, who are you? That was the night I stopped being his wife and started being the woman who needed to know the truth. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that little diary, the blue cover, the shaky letters, the word Daddy. I lay there in bed beside Mark, listening to his breathing. Slow, steady, the breathing of a man with no idea that the floor under his life was starting to crack. In the morning, he kissed my shoulder before leaving for work. "Love you," he said. I smiled back, automatic, empty. The moment his car disappeared down the street, I got up and went straight to the hidden room again. The sunlight crept in through the small window, lighting up the dust in the air. I looked around more carefully this time. There was a dresser, small, painted white with stickers on the drawers. A comb, a few tiny shirts folded neatly, and under the bed, a box of colored pencils. On the wall was a photo, printed from a cheap home printer. It showed a little girl, maybe 6 or 7. Brown hair and pigtails, eyes bright and wide. She was smiling, her arm wrapped around a man's waist. The man was Mark. The photo was grainy, but unmistakable. He was wearing the same leather jacket he'd had since college. I don't remember how long I stood there staring. My throat burned, my hands shook. I whispered, "Oh God, no." Because once you see something like that, your mind can't unsee it. You can't go back to not knowing. I called my best friend Rachel. We'd known each other since university. She'd seen me through the births of my kids, my mother's funeral, and the quiet years of my marriage. When she answered, I couldn't find the words at first. I just said, I think I found something. Something about Mark. I told her about the room, the diary, the photo. There was silence on the other end. Then she said softly, Emily! Do you think he has another child? I don't know, I whispered. I don't know anything anymore. She told me to stay calm, to collect myself before confronting him. If there's something this big, she said, you need to be sure. Don't just go off your feelings. But it wasn't feelings anymore. It was evidence. It was a child's handwriting, a photograph, a secret room hidden behind my bookshelf. Still, I knew she was right. I had to know everything before I spoke. Over the next few days, I started watching him, quietly, closely. He still came home at the same time, still smiled at the kids, still kissed me goodnight. But I started noticing patterns, small things I'd never seen before. Every Thursday, he left work early for client meetings. He'd change his shirt before leaving. Always check his phone twice before getting in the car. When I asked if he wanted to take the kids to the park on Thursdays, he always said, I've got a big deadline. One night, while folding laundry, I saw a receipt in his jeans pocket. A bakery, not one near his office. The date matched one of those Thursday meetings. The total was small, 2 cupcakes and a small toy. That was when I started to feel sick. Not the sharp kind of anger, but the deep sinking dread that seeps into your bones. Because it meant she was real, Sarah, and she was a child who might be asking every week when her father would come back. The next Thursday, I followed him. I felt like I was losing my mind, sneaking behind my own husband's car. But once you've tasted deceit, trust stops feeling natural. It feels dangerous. He drove across town, 30 minutes away. A neighborhood I didn't recognize. Suburban, quiet, with kids riding bikes and women watering flowers. He stopped in front of a pale yellow house. I parked half a block away and watched. He got out, carrying a paper bag. Knocked on the door. A woman opened it, long dark hair, maybe mid-30s. She smiled like she knew him well, like she'd been waiting for him. And then a little girl ran out the door, shouting, Daddy! She leaped into his arms. My stomach dropped. My mouth went dry. That was the girl from the photo, Sarah. He hugged her like he'd been holding his breath all week. The kind of hug I hadn't seen him give in years. Then he went inside. I sat there for almost an hour, gripping the steering wheel, heart pounding. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt hollow. Like my life had become someone else's story, and I was watching it play out from outside the glass. When he finally came out, the woman kissed him goodbye. Not passionately, not sneaky, just soft, familiar, like they'd done it 1,000 times. That's when I drove away. I didn't go home right away. I drove to the old park near the lake, the one we used to go to when we were dating. The air smelled like pine and rain. I sat on a bench, staring at the water, until my hands stopped shaking. I thought about every birthday, every anniversary, every time he'd said, You're my everything. And I realized he'd meant it in halves. Half for me, half for someone else. When I finally got home, he was already there. Cooking dinner, smiling, acting normal. Hey, babe, he said. I picked up Thai food. Hope that's okay. I wanted to throw the food in his face. I wanted to scream. But the kids were there, sitting at the table, chatting about school. Ethan was telling him about his science project. Lily was giggling over her drawings. And Mark? He looked at them with that same soft expression he'd given the other child just hours ago. I sat down, silent. Ate my food. Pretended everything was fine. But inside, I was building a wall, brick by brick, between the woman I used to be and the one who would face him soon. That night, after the kids went to bed, I asked him, Mark, I said softly, is there anything you want to tell me? He froze, just for a second, then smiled. What do you mean? I don't know, I said. Maybe something about Thursdays. He laughed a little, forced. I told you. Client meetings, why? I nodded slowly. Right, client meetings. He reached for my hand. Emily, you okay? You've been quiet lately. I looked at his face, so familiar, so kind-looking, and I thought of that little girl's diary, hidden behind a wall in our own house. I'm fine, I said, just tired. And for the first time in our marriage, I lied to him. The next day, I went back to the hidden room one last time. I sat on the bed holding the diary and whispered, I'm sorry, sweetheart. I didn't even know who I was apologizing to, the child, myself, or the family that would soon fall apart. Then I made a decision. If I was going to end this lie, I'd do it where it began. In that house, behind that bookshelf, in front of that diary. I'd make him face what he'd hidden in the same place he'd buried it. The next evening when he came home, I told him the kids were at Rachel's for a sleepover. I asked him to help me move the bookshelf, said I was thinking of redecorating. He didn't suspect a thing. When we pulled it aside, his face changed. His hands froze on the shelf. He stared at the door like it was something rising from his past to meet him. Open it, I said quietly. He didn't move. So I did. Inside, everything was as I'd left it. The bed, the drawings, the photo. He stood there, silent. I watched the color drain from his face. Who is she? I asked. He didn't answer. His throat moved as he swallowed hard, eyes darting between me and the room. Mark, I whispered. Who is Sarah? His knees gave a little, and he sat down on the edge of the bed, burying his face in his hands. When he finally spoke, his voice cracked. She's my daughter. When he said those words, she's my daughter, the air left my lungs. The silence afterward felt endless. I could hear the ticking of the hallway clock, the faint hum of the refrigerator, even the sound of my own heartbeat hammering inside my chest. I stared at him, the man I'd loved for 13 years, the father of my children, and suddenly I didn't recognize him. His shoulders slumped, his hands trembled. He looked small, weak, but I didn't feel pity. Not yet, I felt stolen from. Your daughter, I said slowly, my voice trembling despite my best effort to stay calm. You mean our daughter, right? He shook his head, just barely. His eyes were glassy, red at the edges. No, not ours. I took a step back. My throat went dry. So, who is she, Mark? He looked up at me, tears pooling but not falling. Her name is Sarah, he whispered. I met her mother before you and I got married. We were on a break. It was a mistake. I didn't even know about the baby until years later. His words blurred together. Mistake. Before you. Didn't know. But my mind caught on one thing. He had known for years. How long have you known? I asked. He hesitated. That pause, that cowardly, heavy pause, told me everything before he even spoke. 6 years, he said finally. 6 years. 6 years of family dinners, anniversaries, vacations, while he was visiting another child on Thursdays, while he built a secret room inside our home for her to stay in. I laughed then, a sharp, hollow sound that didn't even sound like me. 6 years, Mark, 6 years. And you let me live here, in this house, while she was right behind a damn wall? He buried his face in his hands again. I didn't want to lose you. I took another step back. So you lied to me. Every single day. You looked me in the eye, kissed our kids goodnight, and lied. He didn't deny it. He just said, I wanted to do right by everyone. I couldn't choose. That's not love, Mark, I said quietly. That's fear. You didn't want to lose control. We sat there for a long time, him in silence, me in disbelief. My anger kept flickering between fury and grief, like a flame fighting for air. Finally, I said, tell me everything. No more half-truths. No more hiding. He nodded, eyes downcast. Her mother's name is Anna. We met at a project years ago. I didn't know she was pregnant when we split. She moved out of state. A few years later, she reached out. Said she had a daughter. My daughter. She didn't want anything. No money, no drama. Just wanted Sarah to know her father. He took a shaky breath. I went to meet them once. I thought it would be just that. One visit. But she looked like me, Em. I couldn't just walk away. So I started visiting. I thought I could manage both lives, keep everything separate. I know how wrong that sounds, but I didn't know how to stop. I looked around the little room, the stuffed animals, the tiny bed, the diary on the nightstand. So you built this for her, I said. He nodded slowly. A few times a year, Anna would bring her here. I wanted Sarah to have her own space, to feel like she belonged somewhere. I didn't think you'd ever find it. I could feel bile rising in my throat. You hid a child in our house, Mark. You let her play behind our walls while our kids watched cartoons in the next room. How could you possibly justify that? He didn't answer. He just sat there, hunched and shaking, whispering, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, but sorry doesn't erase a lie built brick by brick for 6 years. That night I didn't sleep. I went into my kids' rooms one by one and watched them breathe. Their faces were peaceful, unburdened. I wondered how long that would last, how long before their world broke too. I sat in the hallway till dawn, staring at that bookshelf. That damn bookshelf. By morning, I knew I couldn't keep it a secret. They deserved the truth, maybe not all the details, not yet, but enough to understand that something was wrong. When they came down for breakfast, I tried to smile. The smell of toast and butter filled the kitchen, but it didn't feel like home anymore. Kids, I said gently, there's something Mommy needs to tell you. Ethan looked up, cautious. Is Daddy in trouble? I swallowed hard. Daddy made a mistake, a big one, and we're going to have to figure things out for a while. But you're safe, okay? You're both safe. Lily frowned, confusion clouding her small face. Is it because of the girl? My blood ran cold. What girl, honey? The one in the picture, she said. The one in the secret room. She looks like Daddy. I blinked, stunned. You saw the picture? She nodded. She's pretty, then softer. Is she our sister? I couldn't speak. My chest felt too tight. Ethan glanced at me, waiting for my answer. And that's when I said it. The words that would echo through our house for months afterward. Yes, she is. Later that afternoon, I confronted Mark again, this time not as a wife, but as a mother. You need to tell them, I said. You owe them that, he shook his head. They're too young. They're not too young to be lied to, apparently, I shot back. They found the room, Mark. They already know something's wrong. You can't fix this by pretending. He stood there, helpless, mouth opening and closing like he couldn't find the right lie to fit the situation. Please, Em, he said finally. Don't ruin their image of me. I stared at him, this man who once vowed to protect our family, and realized how far gone he was. You already did that yourself. That evening, I packed a suitcase. Just a few things, clothes, toiletries, the kids' favorite stuffed toys. I called Rachel and told her I'd be staying with her for a while. When I told the kids we were leaving, Ethan asked, Is Daddy coming? I knelt beside him. Not right now, sweetheart. He nodded quiet. But as we walked to the car, I saw him glance back at the house, at the bookshelf, and I knew that image would haunt him for a long time, just like it would me. As we drove away, the sky turned dusky orange. Lily fell asleep in the back seat, clutching her rabbit. Ethan stared out the window, silent tears streaking his cheeks. And me, I gripped the steering wheel and told myself over and over, you're doing the right thing. You're choosing truth. You're choosing safety. But still, the question burned inside me. How do you rebuild a family when its foundation was a lie? The next few weeks blurred together. Rachel let us stay in her guest room. I started therapy for the kids. Mark called every day, left voicemails, apologies, pleas, promises. I didn't answer, but one day a letter came in the mail. No return address, just my name. Inside was a small drawing, a crayon sketch of 3 figures holding hands. The handwriting said, "Thank you for letting my daddy love me. Love, Sarah." My knees gave out when I read it. Because even though she was the living proof of his betrayal, she was also just a child, innocent, caught in the crossfire of grown-up lies. That was when something inside me softened. Not for Mark, for her, because none of this was her fault. Weeks later, I agreed to meet him. At a cafe downtown, neutral ground. He looked older, thinner. There were deep shadows under his eyes. He asked if I'd read Sarah's letter. I nodded. "I never wanted this to hurt you," he said. I looked at him steady. "Then you should have lived a life that didn't require lies." He swallowed hard, nodded. "I understand. Do you?" I asked. "Do you understand what it means to love people honestly? To choose truth even when it hurts?" He didn't answer right away. He just whispered, "I'm learning." After that cafe meeting, something shifted in me. For months I'd been moving through life like a ghost, part anger, part exhaustion, part disbelief. But sitting across from him that day, watching him twist his wedding ring between his fingers, I realized something profound. I was finally done trying to understand why he did it, because no reason could make it right. No guilt could undo the choice he'd made every Thursday for 6 long years. But I wasn't going to let his betrayal define the rest of our lives, mine or our children's. So I made a plan. Not out of revenge, out of clarity. It was time to bring everything into the light. I called a family meeting, me, Mark, and the kids. I told him this would be the only way he'd see them for now. Supervised, honest, transparent. We met at Rachel's house on a Sunday evening. The sky was turning gold through the curtains, and I remember how Lily's small legs swung from the chair as she hummed softly, unaware of how heavy the air around us felt. Mark sat across from me, hands clasped tight. I could tell he was terrified, not of me, but of what the truth might do to his children's eyes. "Ethan," I began softly, "you remember when we talked about honesty?" He nodded. "Your dad has something he needs to tell you." Mark looked at me, pleading, but I just nodded once, firm. He turned to the kids, voice trembling. I made a mistake," he said. "A big one. There's a little girl named Sarah. She's my daughter, too." The silence was thick. I could see Ethan's jaw tighten. He was smart, too smart for his 10 years. He knew what that meant. Lily tilted her head, eyes wide. "So she's our sister?" Mark nodded, barely able to meet her gaze. Lily smiled faintly, like a child does when they don't yet understand pain. "Can she come play sometimes?" Mark's lip quivered. "Maybe one day." But Ethan, he just got up and walked out of the room. I followed him to the porch where he sat hugging his knees. The evening wind was cool, carrying the faint scent of pine and rain. He looked at me, eyes wet but angry. "Why would he do that to you?" I sat beside him. "Because sometimes people let fear make their choices for them," I said. "They think they can hide the truth and protect everyone. But lies always hurt more in the end." He nodded slowly. "I'm never gonna lie like that." I put my arm around him. "That's all I can hope for, sweetheart." Over the next few weeks, we started rebuilding, not as a family, but as individuals learning how to live with what had happened. Mark moved out permanently. We agreed on shared custody, but I set firm boundaries. No more secrets, no surprise visits, no pretending things were normal. I enrolled the kids in therapy. I went back to work at the counseling center. Helping other women through their own crises became my anchor. Ironic, maybe, that I spent my days helping people rebuild trust while mine had been shattered. But somehow it made me feel useful again, human again. Every Thursday, I still caught myself watching the clock around the time Mark used to leave for his meetings. I'd wonder if he was with Sarah now, if she still had that diary, if she still believed her daddy's love came with silence attached. One night, I asked him over the phone, "Does she know about us? About me and the kids?" He hesitated. "Not everything," he said. "But she knows she has a brother and sister. She asks about them sometimes." That night, after hanging up, I sat by the window and thought about that little girl. Innocent, wide-eyed, waiting in that hidden room years ago. How confused she must have been, being told she was both loved and invisible. For the first time, I didn't just feel anger toward Mark. I felt something quieter, sadder, pity. Maybe, not for him as a man, but for the father he'd failed to be. Months passed. The legal process moved slowly, but life went on. The kids started adjusting. Ethan stopped flinching when someone mentioned their dad's name. Lily started asking fewer questions. Then one afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. "Hi," a small voice said. "Is this Miss Emily?" My breath caught. "Yes, sweetheart." "Who's this?" "It's Sarah." There was a pause, a sound like her shuffling the phone nervously. "Mommy said I could call. I just wanted to say thank you for not being mad at me." My throat tightened. "Oh, honey, I could never be mad at you," she sniffled. "Daddy cries a lot. I think he misses you." I took a deep breath. "He'll be okay," I said gently. "And so will you." There was another pause. Then she whispered, "Do I really have a sister?" "Yes," I said, smiling through tears. "Her name's Lily, and she'd love to meet you one day." That conversation, short, tender, unexpected, changed something in me. It made forgiveness feel possible. Not forgiveness for Mark's choices, but for the brokenness we'd all inherited from them. A few weeks later, I arranged a meeting. Just the kids. No drama, no secrets. A quiet park, a sunny afternoon. When Sarah arrived, she was shy at first, holding her mother's hand, clutching a small notebook to her chest. Lily ran up to her with the fearless curiosity only children have. "Hi, I like your shoes." Sarah smiled, small and hesitant. "Thanks. You look like my dad." I watched them, my daughter and the child of my husband's betrayal, as they began to laugh, trading stickers and secrets like they'd known each other forever. Ethan joined them slowly, sitting beside them in the grass. He didn't say much, but when he finally smiled, I felt something unclench inside me, and for the first time in a long while, the air around us didn't feel heavy anymore. Mark showed up near the end, standing at a distance under the oak tree. I didn't call him over. He just watched, tears in his eyes, hands in his pockets, as his 3 children played together for the first time. When he caught my gaze, I nodded once. A silent truce, not love, not reconciliation, just understanding that this was bigger than our pain. That healing wasn't about pretending it didn't happen, but facing it together, honestly. When we left the park, Sarah hugged me. "Bye, Miss Emily." I hugged her back. "Goodbye, sweetheart. Take care of yourself." Her small arms squeezed around my neck, and I thought, maybe this was what grace looked like. Not forgetting, not excusing, but letting light into the darkest corners of the house. That night, after tucking in Ethan and Lily, I went to the living room, the one that used to hide a secret door. I'd sealed that space months ago, but sometimes I still stood there, running my fingers over the smooth wall where the bookshelf once rested. There was no more room behind it now. No bed, no diary, just emptiness, quiet and clean, and I realized something. Maybe that's what truth does. It doesn't always fix what's broken, but it clears out the rot. It gives you space to breathe again. When Mark finally called later that week to thank me for letting the kids meet, I said quietly, "Don't thank me." "Just don't waste the chance to do right this time," he said. "I won't." And I believed him, not because I trusted him again, but because I'd learned that my peace didn't depend on his repentance anymore. It depended on mine, on choosing to stop carrying his sins as my burden. By winter, life had found a new rhythm. We were okay. Not perfect, not untouched, but okay. The kids laughed again. I started painting, something I hadn't done in years. I even caught myself humming while cooking one evening, realizing, with quiet shock, that I felt light. The scars were still there, invisible, tender. But they no longer bled when touched. And sometimes, when I drove past that yellow house across town, I didn't feel anger anymore. Just a strange, bittersweet gratitude. Because that secret life had destroyed my marriage. But it had also forced me to rebuild myself from the ground up, stronger, clearer, braver. It's strange how secrets, once spoken, ripple far beyond the walls they were kept behind. At first, I thought our pain would stay private, confined to our family, quiet and contained. But small towns have sharp ears and quick tongues. Within weeks, people started to know. It began innocently enough, a neighbor asking, "Haven't seen Mark around lately?" Business trip? Then, Rachel's cousin, who went to the same gym as Anna, mentioned that the architect with 2 families was quite the topic among the regulars. By the time I went to church one Sunday, I could feel it, the pity in people's smiles, the hush when I walked by. There's a particular kind of pain that comes with public sympathy. It's not cruel, but it's suffocating. Everyone means well, but every well-meaning look is a reminder of what you've lost. I learned to keep my chin up, smile politely, and focus on my children. But inside, I was learning a new language, the quiet grammar of surviving scandal. One afternoon, I went to pick Ethan up from school, and his teacher asked if we could talk. She closed the classroom door gently and said, "He's doing well academically, but he's quieter lately. Draws a lot of families in art class, sometimes 3 adults instead of 2. I smiled sadly. "He's processing," she nodded. "He's resilient. You both are." I thanked her, but when I got to the car, I cried for the first time in months, not because of pity, but because I finally realized how much it had affected him, how deep the truth had reached into his little heart. Meanwhile, Mark wasn't having it easy either. His firm had started losing clients. Word had spread that he'd betrayed his wife and kept a secret child. In business, especially in small-town circles, reputation sticks harder than glue. One evening, he called me, voice low, tired. "They dropped me from 2 projects today," he said. "Said they wanted someone with a more stable home image." I paused before answering. "I'm sorry, Mark. I know I deserve it," he said. "But I can't stop thinking about how many people I've hurt. You, the kids, Anna, even Sarah. I wanted to protect everyone and ended up ruining everything." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then I said softly, "That's what truth does, Mark. It doesn't destroy. Lies do. Truth just shows what was already breaking." He sighed. "I wish I'd learned that sooner." "So do I said. "But maybe learning it late is still better than never." The community whispers eventually shifted from gossip to quiet respect. People began seeing that I wasn't hiding, wasn't shrinking. I went back to work, volunteered for a support group at the center, Women Rebuilding After Betrayal. At first, I didn't plan to speak. I was just there to listen, help organize, take notes. But one evening, when a young mother broke down mid-sentence saying, "I feel like my life's a lie," something inside me stirred. I stood up and told my story, not in full, but enough. The hidden room, the diary, the truth that broke and rebuilt us. The room went silent. Then one by one, women nodded, some crying quietly. And for the first time, I realized something powerful. My story wasn't shameful anymore. It was healing, not just for me, but for others who'd lived behind their own metaphorical hidden doors. That night, as I drove home, the air felt lighter, the stars clearer. Still, there were moments when anger returned, usually at night, when the house was quiet and the world felt too big. Sometimes I'd catch myself thinking of all the ways he'd fooled me, how easily he'd smiled, how perfectly he'd balanced his double life. But then I'd hear Lily's laughter echo down the hall, or see Ethan sleeping with his sketchbook still open beside him, and I'd remember why I'd chosen peace. Because holding on to anger was like holding on to glass. It only kept cutting me. Then one day, something unexpected happened. Anna, Sarah's mother, asked to meet. We'd spoken only briefly before, about logistics, not emotions. But she wanted to talk, woman to woman. I agreed. We met at a small cafe by the river. She was nervous, fidgeting with her bracelet, voice trembling. "I don't even know what to say," she started. "You have every reason to hate me." "I don't," I said quietly. "I don't hate you." Her eyes filled with tears. "I didn't know he was married at first. And when I found out, I thought walking away was the right thing. But when Sarah got older, she kept asking questions. I didn't want her to think her father didn't love her, so I let him come back. I didn't think about what that meant for you." There was sincerity in her voice, raw and human. I believed her. "You were trying to be a good mother," I said softly. "We both were. He's the one who made the promises he couldn't keep." She nodded, crying silently. "Sarah loves you, you know. She says you're kind. I think you helped her forgive him." I smiled faintly. "Maybe we're all learning to forgive him in our own ways." We parted that day not as rivals, but as two women who had both been lied to, both forced to build something new from the wreckage of one man's choices. That meeting marked the beginning of something unexpected, not friendship exactly, but grace. Sometimes Sarah came over on weekends. The three kids played together, loud and messy and joyful. Their laughter filled the spaces that once held only silence. Mark started attending therapy, real therapy, not the performative kind. He didn't ask for my forgiveness anymore. He just tried to be a better father. And strangely, that was enough for me, because forgiveness, I learned, isn't about saying, "It's okay." It's about saying, "It happened, and I'm still here." By spring, the whispers in town had faded. People stopped seeing me as the woman whose husband cheated. They saw me as Emily again, mother, counselor, survivor. Sometimes, older women would stop me at the grocery store, squeeze my hand, and whisper, "You handled it with such grace." And I'd smile, though inside, I knew it wasn't grace that carried me through, it was grit. It was nights of crying quietly in the kitchen so my kids wouldn't hear. It was learning to make peace with broken pieces. That kind of strength doesn't come from pride. It comes from necessity. One day, about a year after it all began, I went to the attic to look through old boxes. Among them, I found the family photo albums. Smiling faces, summer vacations, birthday cakes. For a moment, my chest tightened. Those memories felt like a lie. But as I looked closer, I realized, no, they weren't lies. They were real in their own time. The happiness I felt then was real. The love I gave was real, and I decided right then that I wouldn't let his deception rewrite my past. Because the past, even when broken, deserves to be remembered honestly. I took one photo, the four of us, before everything, and framed it again. I placed it on the mantel, beside a new one. Ethan, Lily, and Sarah sitting together under the oak tree. 2 photos, 2 truths, both mine. That night, as I watched the fire flicker and the kids laughed in the next room, I realized the most important thing of all. We can't choose what truths we uncover. But we can choose what kind of light we let them bring. It's been almost 2 years now since that morning my daughter found the hidden door. Sometimes it feels like it happened to another woman, someone I used to be, someone who lived her life in the soft shadow of a lie. But other times, it still catches me in quiet ways. When I fold laundry and find a shirt of his the kids still wear, or when the scent of his old cologne drifts from the back of a closet. Healing doesn't happen like a sunrise. It's slower, like dawn creeping inch by inch across a dark field, uncertain at first, then steady, then inevitable. I think I'm finally standing in the light. When I first moved into our new home, a small, sunlit place near the edge of town, I was terrified. The first night it was too quiet. No familiar footsteps, no creak of the floorboards I'd memorized. Just silence and my thoughts. But then, the kids made it feel alive. Lily taped drawings to every wall. Ethan built a fort out of blankets in the living room. Slowly, it stopped being a house and became a home. There's something liberating about building from scratch. No ghosts, no secrets, no hidden rooms. Just open space. Honest space. Mark comes by sometimes, always with notice, always respectful now. He and I speak in calm tones, the kind that come after all the yelling is done, after the tears have been spent. He still looks haunted, but he's trying. He attends every school event, every doctor's appointment. He keeps promises now. It's strange, isn't it? How some people only learn honesty after losing everything they lied for. I remember once, he came by to drop off the kids, and they ran inside while he lingered on the porch. He looked around the new house, hands in his pockets, and said, "You've done a beautiful job here." I nodded. "It feels peaceful," he smiled sadly. "You always were better at finding peace than me." And in that moment, I didn't feel bitterness. Just a quiet acceptance that some chapters end, not because of hatred, but because love evolves into something else. Distance, understanding, and eventually, release. The kids are doing better than I ever dared hope. Ethan's 12 now, taller, quieter, more thoughtful. He started writing short stories. His teacher says he has a gift for empathy in his characters. I tell her he earned that through fire. Lily's 9. Still all sunshine. She paints now. Big, messy colors that fill every inch of the paper. When she showed me one last week, it was a house with no walls. I asked her why, and she said, "So there's no secrets inside." I hugged her so tight I almost couldn't breathe, and Sarah, she visits every few weekends. She and Lily are inseparable, giggling over bracelets and drawings. Ethan pretends to be annoyed by them, but sometimes I catch him slipping extra candy into her bag before she leaves. The first time she called me Auntie M, I had to turn away so she wouldn't see me cry. One afternoon, while cleaning the living room, I found something small wedged between the couch cushions. An old key. For a moment I froze. It wasn't familiar, not from this house. And then I realized it must have been in one of the boxes from the old place. A key to what? The hidden door, maybe. The secret room. I held it in my palm, the metal cool and faintly rusted, and felt a shiver of memory. The diary, the smell of dust, the sound of his voice saying, "She's my daughter." I thought of throwing it away, but then I didn't. Instead, I put it in a small glass jar on the shelf next to a candle labeled New Beginnings. Not as a relic of pain, but as a reminder that even the darkest keys can teach us how to open new doors. People ask me sometimes, the few who know the full story, how I forgave him. The truth is, I didn't, not in the way they mean it. I didn't wake up one day and say, "It's all okay," because it isn't. It never will be. But I forgave myself for not seeing it sooner, for trusting too deeply, for carrying guilt that was never mine. I stopped needing his repentance to validate my healing. I learned that peace isn't a gift someone gives you. It's a home you build inside yourself. And once I understood that, forgiveness came like a gentle tide, not washing everything away, but softening the edges of what hurt the most. A few months ago, I went back to the counseling center to give a talk. The director had asked me to share about truth and emotional resilience. I almost said no, Talking about it still makes my voice tremble. But I knew there were women sitting in those chairs who needed to hear that it's possible to survive what feels unsurvivable. I told them my story. Not the sensational version, but the real one. The slow unraveling, the nights staring at the ceiling, the day I realized that protecting my kids didn't mean protecting his lies. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then a woman in the back stood up, tears in her eyes, and said, "You gave me hope." That's when I realized something. My pain had purpose now. There are still quiet evenings when I sit on the porch with a cup of tea and wonder about the life that might have been. If he had told me the truth from the beginning, if he had trusted love enough to be honest. But then I look at the life I have now, the laughter inside this house, the peace in my chest, the absence of fear, and I know I wouldn't trade it. Sometimes you have to walk through fire to remember your own strength, and when you come out the other side, you don't just rebuild. Last week Sarah gave me a small wrapped gift. She said, "It's something I made." Inside was a drawing, 4 stick figures hand in hand. Underneath, she'd written, "Family isn't always one shape, but it's still love." I framed it, hung it right above the dining table, because she's right. Family isn't perfect. It's not always neat or simple, but when it's real, when it's honest, it's still love, and that's enough. The hardest part of this whole journey wasn't the betrayal or the loss or even the loneliness. It was learning to trust again, not other people, but myself. To believe that my intuition wasn't paranoia, that my boundaries weren't cruelty, that my worth wasn't tied to the lies someone told me. Now, when I look in the mirror, I don't see the woman who was betrayed. I see the woman who chose truth, even when it burned. And in that truth, I found freedom. If I could go back and speak to the version of me who first opened that hidden door, I'd tell her this: you will break, yes, but you will also rebuild. You'll think your world ended, but what's really ending is the illusion. And once that's gone, you'll see clearly for the first time, because brave is not the absence of fear. Brave is opening the door anyway. When I look back now, I realize the story was never really about betrayal. It was about what happens after. After the lies, after the heartbreak, after the truth crawls out of the dark and asks you, "What will you do with me now?" Because truth, real truth, isn't gentle. It doesn't knock politely. It kicks the door open. It demands to be seen, even when it shatters the life you built around comfort and illusion. But here's the thing they don't tell you. Once you stop running from it, truth becomes light. And that light, as blinding as it can be at first, will show you the way back to yourself. I used to think love meant protecting people from pain. That's why I looked the other way when the signs first appeared. Why I told myself to be patient, to trust, to understand. But now I know, love that depends on ignorance isn't love at all. Love is truth, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. My children still ask me sometimes, "Mom, do you still love Dad?" And I tell them the truth. I love the part of him that gave me you. But I don't love the part of him that lied, because forgiveness doesn't mean pretending. It means choosing peace without rewriting history. It means saying, "This happened. It broke me, and I'm still here." That's the part no one claps for, the quiet, invisible work of healing. The mornings you make coffee with trembling hands. The nights you cry softly so the children won't hear. The days you smile through the ache because you promised yourself you wouldn't let bitterness raise your kids. But those are the moments that make you strong. That's where character is born, not in the fire itself, but in the rebuilding afterward. So if you're listening to this and there's something in your life that feels like that hidden room, something you're afraid to open because you know it'll change everything, maybe this is your sign. Be brave enough to turn the knob, because whatever's hiding behind that door, I promise you, you can face it. And once you do, your light will be brighter for it. I told my kids not to trust their father. And for a while I thought that meant we'd never be whole again. But I was wrong, because the truth didn't destroy us. It set us free. Would you have opened that hidden door? Tell me what you would have done. And don't forget to subscribe if you believe, like I do, that even the darkest corners deserve a little light.